You're watching Capital Conversations with Congressman Mike McIntyre, an opportunity for the people of southeastern North Carolina to get an inside look at the issues facing the nation and the U.S. Congress. I invite you to see how your community is affected. Now, from Washington, D.C., here's Congressman Mike McIntyre.
Welcome to Capital Conversations. I'm Mike McIntyre, your congressman from southeastern North Carolina, and this program is part of our ongoing effort to keep you informed about our work in Washington and how it affects you. Today I'm here with my good friend Congressman Collin Peterson, who is the ranking member of the House Agriculture Committee, and he also has served as chairman of the full committee, a committee on which I also serve as a senior member. Today we're going to talk about the future of rural America, the work that needs to be done to ensure that our agriculture industry remains the envy of the world, and, of course, the great priority that it is here in North Carolina. We're also going to talk about the priorities we need in addressing the upcoming Farm Bill. Congressman Peterson, my good friend and ally in promoting America's agricultural economy, has worked with me for the past 16 years on the Agriculture Committee, and together we have worked to ensure that rural America remains a place where families choose to live and businesses want to continue to grow. Congressman Peterson grew up on a farm near Glendon, Minnesota in the community of Baker, and has been active in agriculture and business throughout his life. During his public service career, he has been a strong advocate for farmers and small business owners and a leader on both federal tax policy and conservation issues. He's been a great leader on the last 3 farm bills passed by Congress, so he knows what he's talking about. He's a founding member of the Conservative Democrats' Blue Dog Coalition, of which I'm a part, and in fact he has been a mentor to me over the years. And he continues to be a voice for fiscal responsibility and pragmatic government policies. In other words, ways to find a solution instead of painting people in a corner, which so often we unfortunately see happen today. So, first of all, Collin, I want to say thank you for joining us. I have great respect for your leadership. Congressman Peterson, I mentioned we had worked together the last 16 years that I've had the opportunity to be in Congress, but actually he was elected back in 1990, so he's been in Congress since 1991. And if you would tell our viewers, first of all, a little bit about the Farm Bill process. I know that we've just gotten news that the Senate is getting ready to set a hearing schedule, and we know that as the discussions about the Farm Bill always come up, I just met with our Agriculture Committee in southeastern North Carolina recently, that they're eager to know what can we expect, what kind of timetable are we looking at. Could you shed some light on just how the process works?
Well, we've been through some of it already, but the idea now, the Senate announced hearings today. They've got, I think, 5 hearings set in February and March. So they're going to go through that process. We're going to have hearings in the House as well. We've already had a number of hearings over the last couple of years, but we'll have some hearings. The idea is for the Senate to move first, because we always have problems getting them to be able to do anything because of their rules. So the idea is if they can move this through the Senate committee, and once that happens, then we will take it up in the House committee and move it through the House committee. Then if the Senate is able to move it through the Senate floor, once that happens, then we will take it up and try to move it through the House floor. Okay. And then it'll go to conference committee and we'll try to work out the differences. The time frame is to try to get this done by May. We've done a lot of the work already because we did this super committee process where we actually put together a farm bill. I hope that we use that as a place to start. We've worked out a lot of the details. There's still some issues in the commodity title between what we're going to do if direct payments go away and how it's going to impact crop insurance and so forth. But in conservation, rural development, some of these other areas, we've got those worked out. And I think people are pretty happy with what we have put together. We also have a new dairy program that's been worked out that's in there. So I'm hoping we can take the work we've done, work it through the process, get something done by May, because the bill expires September 30th of this year and we need to get this done. The longer we get towards the election, the harder it's going to be. So we're going to try to get it done, this spring.
Well, a good point. Of course, September 30th is the end of the federal fiscal year, which is why that date is so important. When you talk about the different pieces of the Farm Bill you've been working on, and some of them already look like they're shaping up in better ways than perhaps in the others, I know one thing you have to do is balance competing regional interests and differences. And I know you've been a master at that, having served as chairman of the full committee and now, of course, being the ranking committee member of the full committee. Tell us, what do you think is the key in finding a fair balance when you're looking at the farmers in the Midwest and the ranchers out west, and then the row farmers in places like we live, or the specialty crop farmers? How you were able to balance those competing interests?
Well, that's part of the issue we've still got to deal with, because we have some differences that have come up. But what we tried to do in the super committee process was accommodate that by having different programs for different crops for the first time. And this is something I told Chairman Lucas early on, that I didn't believe we could any longer have a one-size-fits-all commodity program because there's too many differences between the crops. Mm-hmm. And when cotton came in and said they wanted to give up their direct payments and move to this new stacks program, that basically took the support away from the direct payments, because my folks up in my part of the world, they've been willing to give up the direct payments for a while. Mm-hmm. So what we did is we put the stacks program in for cotton, so they're happy with that. But then rice and peanuts, what we were talking about in this revenue program didn't really work for them, and they don't really have a crop insurance program that works for them very well. So what we did is we gave people the option that you can either take the revenue program, that shallow loss program that we're going to use to replace the direct payments, or you can take a higher target price. You have the option. Mm-hmm. Peanuts and rice will take the higher target price because the revenue and crop insurance doesn't work for them. So by giving people a choice, that has allowed us, I think, to accommodate these regional differences and the differences in crops, because the rice market and the peanut market and the cotton market are very different than the corn and soybean market, and we're trying to recognize that in this in the new bill we're putting together.
Well, and I know those in our area appreciate that, because when you mention cotton and peanuts, those are big in our area. Of course, as you know, tobacco is, and then we have a lot of the specialty crops too, with blueberries and strawberries, and we of course have sweet potatoes and
we've been trying to get more of the specialty crops covered by crop insurance, and that's happening. We're making progress. We've got pilot programs. We've got a lot more of the crops being covered. We need to do more in that area, but it takes time, so we're working through that, and I think what we put together in the super committee has got pretty good support around the country, as best you can when you have to cut $23 billion out of the farm bill. That makes it difficult.
Which is part of the effort to make sure we move toward a balanced budget and cut back on federal spending. Well, you mentioned about insurance, and I know crop insurance has been a big issue for many folks back home. Can you tell us a little bit about what thought has gone into that to make sure crop insurance remains a very viable and reliable program?
Okay, well, the first thing we decided when we got together on the super committee process was there would be no cuts to crop insurance in this bill. And part of the reason for that is that we've already made cuts in crop insurance in the 08 bill and in the SRA that we negotiated a year ago, May. So my position and the position of the committee came to be that we should leave it alone until we see how these changes actually play out in the real world. And we don't have enough information to know that yet. We're not going to know for another year and a half how these changes actually impact everybody. We think it's going to be fine, but we don't think we should make any changes. So we're going to leave crop insurance alone. It's going to have the same subsidies for premiums, the same type of coverage, the same baseline, all of that. And that will make sure that we've got a good crop insurance program that'll work for people.
Oh, that's great. Well, I know folks back home will be glad to hear that, and I think they should be assured that we're going to make crop insurance work. That's the bottom line.
Number one priority in the Farm Bill is to keep crop insurance. And at the end of the day here, where we're heading long term, probably crop insurance is going to be the only support you have for agriculture somewhere down the line. You know, I don't know how long, maybe 10 years, 15 years. So we need to make it work for all of the crops.
Right.
And I've got a meeting when we leave this deal that we're doing right now. I'm meeting with rice and RMA to try to help them get a crop insurance product that works for them. I've been working with peanuts and RMA to try to make that happen with peanuts. So even though I'm from the north, I've been working with you guys, and I want to say you've been a tremendous leader for your part of the world.
Thank you.
Senior member of the committee, help us pull all this together. So we have to, you know, we all have to come out winners in this.
Right.
So we can't just have something for the north and something for the south. We got to have something that works for everybody.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that's why your leadership's been key to making it work, and thank you, and I can say it on behalf of the farmers in our area as well, in the rural communities. There are a number of changes, I know, to the commodity title of the Farm Bill. What principles do you see guiding those changes that are being made to the commodity title?
Well, we've relied on direct payments since the '96 bill. And they've become harder and harder to defend because they're paid whether they're needed or not. So if you have good crops and good prices, which we've had the last 3-4 years, it's hard to defend why you're sending money to farmers when they've had the best crop they've ever had and they're getting pretty good prices. So cotton, you know, they got sued by Brazil, they lost the case. Cotton decided to give up their direct payments. When that happened, basically the whole, you know, debate shifted. So now the idea is to give up direct payments, you know, and to shift this money to a system where you get paid when you need it, but when you don't need it, you don't get paid.
So the
And
safety
that's
net
harder,
stays
that's
in
easier
place.
to defend, pardon?
The safety net stays in
Yeah,
place.
it's a more
then.
safety net type of program than a program where we just make payments based on what you used to grow. The other thing we're looking at doing is paying people based on what they actually grow and not on what they grew back in 1996. And that's another thing that helps us explain this program to urban people better, you know, that we're not paying people on some fictitious base that they don't grow anymore. That's hard to explain to people why we're doing that, you know. So those are some changes that we're going to make.
When we talk about the concerns in rural America, and I know you grew up in a small community. Before the show we were talking about Baker. The area of Baker, Minnesota had 49 people and still has 49 people today. We appreciate that in small towns and small communities like we have in southeastern North Carolina. Recently we had the Undersecretary for Rural Development come down to Bladenboro, right in the center of our district, and we talked about some very important programs such as rural broadband. We talked about rural health facilities. We've also been working with our rural firefighters and EMS units. All of this as an effort to show that folks in rural America should not be forgotten. We all know tax season is approaching with April 15th in the near future, and we like to see a return on our tax dollars to help our communities. I remember back when we were discussing programs for rural America, the New York Times once challenged me about whether we'd ever get that kind of assistance such as broadband for rural areas through the Senate, because, you know, more people are in urban and suburban areas by definition. But we did, and I know the difference rural broadband has made in our part of southeastern North Carolina in bridging that digital divide. What do you see of ways we can continue to put the pressure on to make sure rural development and in rural America continues to be spurred in ways that will help the economy, help jobs, help keep our small towns alive, help keep the rural areas connected?
Well, the Farm Bill is a lot more than just helping farmers.
Right.
You know, the majority of the bill is for food stamps, or now the SNAP program, you know, those types of feeding programs. We also have rural development, we have conservation, you know, a number of other things. So we're envisioning that we continue our commitment to rural development in the 2012 Farm Bill, you know, and we keep the authorizations there, trying to move broadband into these communities. But one of the problems we've had, as you know, is that we put a lot of money into broadband, especially in the stimulus, but it keeps getting spent overbuilding existing systems. You know, and we've got to get this money out to where they don't have broadband.
Right.
You know, we can't keep,
to the unserved
because everybody wants
too.
to go to a town that's got 20, 30,000 people because it's big enough so they can make some money, and nobody wants to serve an area where there's very few people, and that's a continuing problem. Some of us we created this Universal Service Fund caucus where we are proposing to take the Universal Service Fund, which was used to provide telephone service
in the rural
areas, and shift that to broadband, and then say that it can only be used to build out systems where there is no service, you know, and you know, so we're going to continue to work on that and make sure that the grants for wastewater and water systems and all that sort of stuff are still in the Farm Bill. But the problem we authorize a lot of this stuff, but a lot of these programs in rural development are actually funded by the appropriators. And this push to cut the budget, the discretionary spending, has put pressure on those programs like it has on a lot of other things.
Right.
So we authorized more spending in the Farm Bill than the appropriators actually appropriated. And we're going to have to keep the pressure on them to make sure they come up with the money to follow what we think should be done that we laid out in the Ag Committee.
Well, I know when you mention rural broadband, really recently in southeastern North Carolina, an area down near Nakina and Molly and Crusoe Island, extremely small communities, similar to Glendon and Baker up in Minnesota. They were completely unserved when it came to rural broadband. I remember a mother, I was with the utility crew that was actually putting down the infrastructure for broadband last August, and a mother ran out to me and she said, my son will now actually be able to do his homework at home. He will not have to go back into town to the library or stay late after school because he could have that broadband access. And then I think of an African-American woman who was able to buy telemedicine, who could not afford transportation to a university medical center 120 miles away, but she could talk directly to her doctor face to face. He could show her the x-rays, show her what he was looking at in her records, and what that meant to give her that assurance to have a face-to-face discussion through telemedicine. So you're right, we want to make sure we can reach these unserved as well as the underserved areas. And of course our rural firefighters and rural EMS, the water and wastewater, if you don't, as I say, get the clean water in and get rid of the dirty water, you're not going to attract business industry, hospitals, health clinics.
And these small towns can't afford to do this on their own.
Right, they don't have
If
the
they
tax
don't have the
base.
help from us, it's not going to happen.
Right.
And we recognize that. You know.
Which is why it's exciting to know they can get some return from their federal tax dollars to be able to help them. One of the other areas I know has been in the area of renewable energy. There's been a great concern, I know, with the hog producers down in my part of North Carolina about the prices of corn, and I know there was a concern about prices at the grocery store about corn. There's a great support for biofuels, but not with regard to the corn or how it affects feedstock. Generally speaking, what are your thoughts in the new Farm Bill about renewable energy?
Well, we had an energy title in the 08 bill for the first time. But, you know, we have now eliminated the tax credit and the tariff for ethanol.
Right.
The effect of that has been to lower the support for all renewable energy. And I tried to tell people, by pushing what they did, what you're going to basically do is stop this whole thing. And that's what's happened. So frankly, I don't see much support moving forward for these renewables like cellulosic ethanol and so forth. For one of the reasons is that they can never actually commercialize this. They've been telling us for 10 years that they're 5 years away from getting this done. They never get any closer. We just had this big outfit in Georgia go belly up because they couldn't do it. They were the best financed in the country. You had Solyndra go upside down, you know, in the solar area. So there's some concern being raised in Congress and around the country about whether this government money going into these technologies makes sense or not. And, you know, how much we're going to do in the Farm Bill, you know, remains to be seen on all of that. But, you know, what I tried to tell people when this debate went on with corn ethanol, you know, we're not going to build any more corn ethanol plants, and we haven't for the last 2 years. The CBO is now projecting that corn not in 2012, but in 2013, corn is going to go $4.50 a bushel. You know, and all of these commodity prices are projected to come down. So that demonstrates that, you know, it wasn't ethanol that was driving up the price of this corn. We got blamed for it, but it wasn't us. When this corn comes down to $4.50, that's now below the cost of production. You know, so we're going to have other problems here shortly. You know, so you know, there's a lot of folks that are skeptical about whether we can actually get this cellulosic new alternative energy actually going or not, because there's just a lot of problems. And we're so short of money that I think people are going to be reluctant to put money into something that's not a sure deal, and are going to put it instead into the you know, the rural development that we know is going to actually make a difference out there.
Right.
You know, and make sure we can hold everything together.
Well, I know how important rural development programs have been in our areas, and when we talk about the difference for those communities, what it means, whether it's broadband or telemedicine or the fire departments or law enforcement or small business, the small business loans, a lot of folks don't realize that part of rural development money, as you said, the Farm Bill not only helps farmers, but it's far-reaching. It's really more of a rural economic empowerment or development bill that actually allows small businesses to be able to
and the farmers
to
need
get
those
loans.
small businesses and vice versa.
Right. It's what makes the small communities be able to thrive and be successful. I know you've been a strong leader through the years through the Blue Dog Coalition in trying to put our country's fiscal house in order. And you mentioned earlier about how the agriculture community, there's cuts across the board in the in the federal budget, reducing the debt, trying to move toward balancing the budget. Do you have any concerns, like I expressed with regard to broadband, that there may be those who try to take advantage unduly of agricultural programs? We know agriculture is less than 1% of the entire federal budget. At times it was less than 0.5% of the entire federal budget. Yet it seems to be a favorite whipping boy when it comes to, you know, others who don't understand agriculture in rural America saying, oh, we're spending too much on this and that, when actually it's a minute piece of the entire federal budget.
Well, I think nobody should underestimate the difficulty we're going to have getting this bill through. But, you know, we stepped up to the plate. The super committee said to every committee, you know, you guys, we have this sequestration process, but, you know, you guys come forward, show us how to cut your part of the budget. You know, everybody do that, and we'll have a $1.2 trillion reduction in the deficit. The only committee that did it, the only committee that even tried, was agriculture, and we did it. Our sequestration number was $16 billion. We came up with a bill that cut $23 billion. If every other committee did what we did, we'd have met that goal and exceeded it. So we've done our job. We've shown that we can do it, you know, and we're willing to do it. But we're not going to go out there and be the only ones that actually step up to the plate. That's not fair. But you got a lot of people that are, you know, they just don't understand agriculture, and they think their food comes from the grocery store, and they don't like the way we raise our pigs, you know, and they don't like the way we grow our corn. They have no idea what's going on, and if they got their way, the price of food would double or triple.
Yeah,
you know,
and then it would affect everybody.
And
there would be an outcry,
really irritates the heck out of me, because agriculture is the most successful industry in the country right now. We have a wonderful thing going on in this country. We're having very little support from the government. This is the best money the government is spending. I mean, people should be thankful for what we're doing. And what they do is beat us up. It just drives me crazy, you know. So it's going to be hard, you know, and we'll get a good bill out of committee because of people like you. We got sensible people that understand agriculture on the committee. We'll get a good bill out of committee. What I'm worried about is when it gets to the floor. And we have a lot of new people that are off the wall, as you know,
stand up.
You know, and in both parties. And it's not going to be easy holding this together, but we're going to make every attempt to make sure we do it.
Well, I want to thank you, Collin, for being with us today, because I know it will be a fight. It always is for agriculture. As I told some people back home, and as folks know, I serve on both the Armed Services Committee and Agriculture, and they're two of the most bipartisan committees in Congress, because I don't know of anybody that doesn't want to be safe or anybody that doesn't want to eat. And if we can't provide food for the people, or food for an army, then if we can't keep ourselves secure, then we've got problems and can't do much else. It's worth fighting for, our agricultural program. And you know, as I've shared with folks before, if you go over to the Library of Congress, that beautiful building across the street from the Capitol, there's a mosaic as you enter that great room there where you see the busts of famous poets, and you see the various sculpture, you see the wonderful paintings and the quotes from literature throughout history. And it lists the great academics and disciplines of study. And they're not necessarily in alphabetical order. I mean, they have engineering and they have the sciences and architecture and literature, but what they have at the top is agriculture. And as we know, as Daniel Webster once said, that the founders of civilization are the tillers of the soil, or agriculture. So we're grateful for the work you do. I want to thank you for joining us today. I want to thank our viewers for being with us. You've heard from one of our great leaders for agriculture in America, who I'm proud to stand with, who works across party lines because we believe agriculture and food and fiber are that important, as well as rural development for all of America, wherever the citizens may have concerns. I appreciate the fact that we can work together, Collin, and I hope that our viewers have benefited today. The Farm Bill is going to be a very important bill to our area. There'll be much discussion about it, so if you have concerns and want to contact our office, feel free to call us at one of our local offices in North Carolina, in Wilmington or Fayetteville, in Bolivia or in Lumberton, or you can call our Washington office, and we're always glad to help. Thank you for being with us. I encourage our viewers also to follow us on Facebook or Twitter. If you have concerns you want us to know about, please feel free to contact our office. Thank you for joining us for this section of Capitol Conversations. May God bless you, and I hope things will continue to go well for you and your family. Pray for us as we work for the folks up here in Washington and work for the folks back home.